firefighters are here for? Don't know. I'm trying to.
Because they like us.
They're buying EMS.
Oh, maybe that's what they're here for. Good evening. Welcome to City of Sugar Land City Council meeting for Tuesday, September the 20th. A little bit about our agenda. In a minute, we're going to have the invocation and the pledge by Councilmember Ferguson, and then we're going to move to a recognition. Following the recognition, then we'll go through the normal agenda. William, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it.
Let's take a moment. Father God, we come to you tonight with great joy to say thank you. Thank you for this great city. Thank you for the great leadership you've put together. Father, all we need tonight is wisdom. We seek it through humility. We seek to serve fairly and just throughout this great city that you have put together. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We've got a special recognition tonight. I'm going to ask Scott Butler, our Director of Budget and Strategy, to come down and introduce the item for us. It's the Government Finance Officers Association Budget Award and Recognition. Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. I joined the city a little bit over a year ago, and while I had stresses of learning a new city, learning a new state, learning everything that comes with relocating, the biggest stress was my first meeting. Councilmember Jacobson told me that if we did not get the Distinguished Budget Award, that there was going to be a problem. And fortunately for me, we were recognized again this year. This is the 26th year that the city has been recognized for this award. And what it represents is a commitment to following best practices. There are 18 different categories that we have to demonstrate proficiency in terms of our reporting within the budget book to try to educate the public on how we deliver services and what that means from a financial perspective. Now, I can't take credit for this award. I have an amazing group of professionals that do all the work. And so they are absolutely critical to this. It's Justin Mejorado, Ali Sauls, Tyson Lopez, and Crosby Q. And they do.
Why don't y'all move over here? Scott, that wasn't any pressure, was it? That wasn't any pressure at all. Get y'all, come over here because we're going to get a picture with everybody. Council members, if y'all come down, y'all are in the back row. Come on, Meredith, don't be shy. Scott, on goodness side, great work, great job. Thank you. There's the Braves Day outfit right there. We're going to move on now to item number 2, public comment. I do have one person signed up, and I'm going to call that person forward in just a minute. Anyone that's in the audience, even if you haven't signed a card, you're welcome to speak. And we don't have anybody online yet, but anybody online is also welcome to speak. So at this time, I'm going to invite Miss Susan Ridley. Susan, if you'd come up to the podium. And I think you've got an address. You can, your name, address, and then you got 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Susan Ridley. Good afternoon. I appreciate the honor of being able to speak to the mayor and city council. So my concern that I want to talk about is in regards to the $2.3 million fee that pertains to the TCEQ Stormwater Compliance Fee. I read in the local throwaway paper that the city council was considering passing this fee onto certain consumers versus paying it out of the general fund, which is where it was previously paid through. This fee to the consumers would not be distributed equitably, as it would not be levied against religious institutions, universities, and the school district. All of those organizations use water and pay a water bill. There is no reason they should not be assessed the fee. I reviewed the 7/19/22 fiscal year 23 budget, and I saw that the sales tax revenue for 2022 was 21.8% over budget. The hotel tax revenue was $500,000 over budget. The funds are there in the general fund to continue defending this compliance fee. Our water bills are already going to be increased by either $7 or $10, depending on what you've read, to fund some 3-year capital improvement funding. So to add this fee is just adding insult to injury. I have to admit, some months our water bill is higher than our electricity and gas bill. That is just insane. There was no mention in the newspaper article if this fee is a one-time fee or if it will be a continuing fee. Once the $2.3 million is paid for, will the fee stop? It is very rare that fees go away. Cities find another way to use the temporary fees to fund something else. That being said, I urge the City Council to please reconsider paying for the $2.3 million TCEQ Stormwater Compliance Fee out of the general fund. And if you won't do that, please consider distributing the cost to all water users, not just individuals and businesses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Susan. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address any of the items on the agenda? Thank you again, Susan. We're going to move now to item number 3. We're going to pull item number 3F, and we're going to pull item number 3I. So the items that we'll be considering are A, B, C, D, E, G, H, and J. With regard to A, first and final consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land Ordinance number 2280, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget for the City of Sugar Land, Texas, to provide that the revised budget address funds relating to certain capital and operating budget matters, and that this amendment be adopted as the budgeted amount for those funds. Anyone comments? Additional items to pull? Do I have a motion? Got a motion by Jacobson. I've got a second by McCutcheon.
Mayor, is this for the consent agenda less the 2 items?
It is. If you'll vote at this time, please. And it passes unanimously 7-0. And again, that was for items 3A, B, C, D, E, G, H, and J. I'm now going to recuse myself and pass it on to the Mayor Pro Tem.
Council, we need a motion to approve consent agenda item F. Motion by Kamali. Second. Second by Lane. Please vote. Okay, passes 6-0. Please recall the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Now we're going to take up item 3I, consideration of an action on authorization of a contract with Fund of Bounds, Inc. in the amount of $332,592 through Buy Board Cooperative Purchasing Contract number 592-19 for the supply and installation of playground equipment for the Brazos River Park Phase 3 playground construction, CIP CPK 2104, utilizing American Rescue Plan Act funds. And we have with us William Hashtick, our Assistant Director of Parks and Rec, and this was pulled by Ferguson and Watley. William.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Good evening. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all might have on this project.
You go ahead.
Suzanne.
Thank you, sir. I asked this to be pulled because when I read this whole item, there was just so much good stuff in it that I think it needed to be shared publicly. So I just would like to ask you a couple of questions or to hit on some highlights, and I don't know if this is on William's agenda as well. Number one, it serves that we save cost because we used a Sugarland vendor. And I wanted you to explain a little about that because I think that's huge for Sugarland and for cost saving. Number two, you were inclusive using ADA equipment, and I think that is massive when we look at serving the whole city, so thank you for that. And number three, we utilized ARPA funding, so tell us how we did that and saved taxpayers money.
Okay, yes, thank you, good questions. The first question was about Fund of Balance contract and saving money. And it's true, we worked with White Oak Studios Engineering here at City of Sugarland to separate that playground contract from the Gadberry contract that was approved earlier at City Council in order to kind of avoid that general contractor markup. And then, of course, we have project managers that can oversee that contract quite well. And the Fund of Balance is a fixed buy board contract with a pretty good discount. And yes, they are a local Sugarland-based contractor. And Peyton with Fund of Balance is actually here tonight, and he is also available to answer any specific playground questions that I can't answer. And ADA, there is an ADA Freedom Swing in this playground. We're excited about that. And it's just a really awesome playground. 5 to 12-year-old 3-deck structure, 2 slides, 2 to 5-year-old structure, swings, and then a nice burliner climbing structure, rope structure that the kids just love over at Memorial Park. This one's a little bigger. And so we're just really excited about getting a playground over at Brazos River Park. And we think it'll help spread the love at Memorial Park over to Brazos River Park a little bit. And then your last question, I think I forgot.
The funding for it?
ARPA funding. Budget can probably speak a little bit more on specifics on the ARPA funding, but when I found that we were allocated ARPA funding for parks, I immediately thought about this playground project that didn't quite have all the funding, and I thought it would be a good fit. And luckily, we have an awesome budget team that thought the same thing and able to get it going.
Follow up?
Follow up. Go ahead.
I just want to congratulate staff and you for a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
William.
Okay, now that Suzanne stole most of my questions, I'm left with, what is this thing going to look like?
Good question. I did put some renderings in the council workshop room of what it's going to look like, because pictures are like 1,000 words. And I like to talk, but maybe y'all don't want to hear me talk that much. But it's going to be quite large. And like I said, the tower, the 5 to 12-year-old structure is kind of a 3-deck tower, 2 slides coming off of it, a nice, really burliner climbing rope structure like octagon. and then a 2 to 5 structure like a ship. And then it's going to be really cool.
Follow up, Mayor.
Follow up, go ahead.
That was a great presentation because I can almost see it. The reason I also wanted to pull this is there are so many people excited about our parks and everything that's going on outdoors. So I think Suzanne and I must share the same excitement about this. And I would have loved to have seen a artist rendering like on this screen, but you did a pretty good job with the ship and all. So thank you.
Got a motion by Watley. William, you want a second? Second. Got a second by Ferguson. You'll vote at this time, please. It passes 7-0. Congratulations, William. Great job. Item number 4, budget, 4A. First and final consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land ordinance number 2279, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, adopting the annual budget for the City of Sugar Land, Texas, for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2022, and ending September 30, 2023, appropriating the sums as set forth therein, adopting the capital improvements program 2023 to 2027, and adopting a compensation plan. Scott Butler, our Director of Budget and Strategy. Scott.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, we essentially wrap up the FY23 budget. So what I'm going to do is go through several slides that outline what we're trying to accomplish. And then there's also some slides to give you some comparisons that we shared in the workshop as far as understanding what the cost is to our residents and our community so that we understand the impact of service delivery. So first, from a strategy perspective, I highlighted three words in here: leadership, stewardship, and strategic investment. And so we take our responsibility to be leaders in our conservative approach to budgeting. We try to be resilient in terms of not only planning for the needs today, but planning for what we need to accomplish tomorrow and beyond. And then we recognize that we have a responsibility not only to deliver things in a cost-effective way, but we recognize that at the end of the day, it's the community that we're serving and our responsibility to provide them the best service possible and exceed their expectations. So for FY23, our goal is to make strategic investment in our highest priority areas. Those include reliable infrastructure, improving the quality of life for the community, a focus on our champion workforce, because that's the thing that separates us from the same service that every other community provides. And then we also have an emphasis on public safety, continuing to invest in training, equipment, and facilities. Another thing that we talk about is what our desired outcomes are. And I've shared with council on many occasions. We ask ourselves the question, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? And so we talk about our investment in public safety. We talk about our champion workforce, what differentiates us from every other city. We talk about achieving the council strategic outcomes and focusing on what it is that the community wants us to do. We recognize that we have a responsibility to provide reliable infrastructure for those core services that the community depends on. And then our efforts to enhance the quality of life, to continue to make sure that Sugar Land is the best city that we can make it. On the capital side, for FY23, we are working to accelerate the projects that remain from the 2019 bond program. Those include projects in drainage, streets, and public safety. I should note that all remaining drainage, streets, and public safety projects are included in FY23 at the council's direction. It also includes further investment on the utility side to make sure that we continue to implement the integrated water resource plan that guides our investment in infrastructure to make sure that we're providing great service. Just some background as far as the budget itself. We originally filed the budget on July 19th. The total budget for fiscal year 23 is $382.03 million, which includes nearly $100 million in capital investment. That's a significant investment, and those projects will pay dividends going forward for the community. In terms of the overall CIP, it represents nearly a $300 million investment over the life of the 5-year CIP. This is a snapshot of what that looks like across the city. So when you think about services that we provide, whether it's utilities, the airport, solid waste, our investment in economic development opportunities, capital projects, and then the debt service for capital projects that have been completed, as well as the general fund. The general fund and capital projects, I've talked about how much investment is in those for FY23. The general fund represents all of those outward-facing services that you think of: public safety, parks, streets, and it represents a significant investment for FY23. In terms of capital projects, this is what the overall investment looks like, and I mentioned the most significant investment includes drainage, public safety, as well as streets. To talk about where we get the revenues for the FY23 budget, first, on a sales tax basis, we recognize that sales tax can be volatile, and so we strive to be conservative in that approach. We have financial management policies that we follow in order to make sure that we budget conservatively. Property tax. The property tax is remaining flat at whether you say 0.3465 or roughly 34.65 cents. The utility rates. We've talked about that this was the last year of the 10-10-10 plan. When we evaluated both the capital and operational needs, we have revised that to be $7 instead of that $10 increase for that last year. And then from here on out, our goal is to have what we consider maintenance increases, but it's something that we evaluate each year based on the capital and operational needs for the utility system. We also talked about with council the stormwater compliance fee, recognizing that we have some unfunded mandates as well as some services that we provide in order to provide reliable stormwater and drainage service to the community. It's approximately $3 per month for residential customers. And then on the solid waste side, we've talked about a new contract that's recently been approved by council, and that for 2023 it represents a decrease from the current rate being $20 and the new rate being $19.85 per month. As far as the operating expenditures, this is just a high-level overview of what we're looking at. First, I've talked about the importance of us following the council strategic priorities. We've also looked at making sure that we're investing in services that provide value to the community or add value to the community. For FY23, we also have significant investment via the ARPA funds. It's important to note that much of this funding is made up of investment that would normally be funded out of the general fund. And so to Councilmember Watley's comment earlier this evening, in a sense, we were able to save that money and instead use the ARPA funding that was provided through the federal government. We also strive to maintain our financial resiliency. I talked about our long-term planning that we're investing not only for FY23 but beyond to make sure that we can continue to provide the best service. And then we continue to focus on making sure that we have a low residential tax burden, recognizing ultimately the stewardship that we have to the residents of our city. We showed this during the workshop. This provides just a brief snapshot of what a residential cost comparison looks like when you look at the different segments that make up the average total cost for a resident, including property tax, their water utility bill, stormwater fee, and solid waste fee. You can see where Sugar Land rates compared to those other cities. It's worth noting for comparison's sake that both Pearland and Carrollton do not currently have stormwater fees, but you can see again where we rate compared to those overall services. This is just a snapshot if we were to break down a monthly cost, recognizing that property tax isn't paid on a monthly basis, but this is what it would look like in comparison to the two cities that we show there. And so you can see the value that we believe that Sugar Land is providing in terms of service overall. From time to time, we get questions about the residents will see their total tax bill and feel like that's all part of the city services. This is just to show for what the residential tax burden is in terms of overall tax bill. The city of Sugar Land's portion represents roughly 13% of that total bill in comparison to those other entities that make up the total tax bill. In terms of changes that we made to the file budget that was provided to council back in July, It includes changes to the general fund and debt service that applies to property tax estimate. This was discussed by Jennifer Brown during the workshops. Based on the certified tax roll, it showed that the city will receive additional revenue, so that revenue's been included. We also advanced some drainage and streets projects as directed by council, primarily because of that additional property tax revenue that was provided. It allows us to advance those projects. We also made changes and revisions to the benefits fund based on the final decisions from the benefits committee in order to sustain what is ultimately the benefits that are provided for city staff. And then also within the file budget is establishing the stormwater compliance fee enterprise fund, which we talked about during the workshop. Allows us to separate the revenue and expenditures tied to stormwater compliance so that they're not commingled with the general fund. It allows us to be more transparent in terms of everything that those revenues pay for from a service perspective. It also allows us to plan more effectively by separating it out from the general fund. In terms of the discussion that we had with council and the community, this is just a high-level overview of the meetings that we had during the month of August in order to provide information related to the budget. I should note that each of these meetings are available online should anyone want to review the discussions that took place during these meetings to understand these topics more fully. Some additional public education and engagement, and included on August 16th, the public hearing on the PIT assessment. On September 6th, we had the public hearing on the proposed budget. September 13th was the public hearing on the 2022 tax rate. And then we also have the FY23 budget presented on our website, as well as there has been social media messaging via our current platforms. So council recommended action is approval of ordinance 2279, first and final reading of the FY23 operating budget, 2023-2027 capital improvement program, and compensation plans. And then I'm here for any questions, Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott, at the budget workshop where we discussed the stormwater compliance fee, and we were discussing whether or not certain entities should be exempt, and we decided that the only exempt entities would be taxing entities, because if we charge a fee to a lid, for instance, then the lid just raises the taxes on the same taxpayer. So it really doesn't help. I just want to verify that that is exactly how the budget reads.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Mayor.
Okay. Thanks, Stuart. So a little bit, Scott, I know when we talked about it, so churches actually are going to pay the stormwater fee.
They're included. Yes, Mayor.
And where that fee came from, that came from the federal government. It's actually part of the Clean Water Act. It's called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. When the city reached 100,000 people, we were required to enter into a different type of compliance. And that compliance is, it's labor intensive, and it takes a lot more effort than what we had done previously. And actually the stormwater compliance fee is partly going to fund that. We're going to move it over more like an enterprise fund, just like you do with our water and wastewater fee. And then we will, I guess there were some comments that were made about what are we going to do with the money in the general fund? Well, right now, as you can imagine, in an inflation environment of 10 to 12%, depending on who's counting the numbers, our employees right now, police, fire, EMS, public works, those people that are hourly, are behind the curve. Let's just be real honest. We took an increase this past year, about mid-year, to try to help catch up some of that. That was before this rampant inflation hit. We budgeted for some this year. We'll probably take some additional next year. And all that goes to say that this was fully vetted with the city council. We did it it was a business decision for the council. We spent at least a couple hours talking about it, and we believe this is the most fair way to spread that cost. Businesses are going to bear a significant portion beyond what the residents will bear on the stormwater compliance fee. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure can, Sean.
Scott, thank you for the presentation, and you and your entire team over this last several months that we've been reviewing this. Can you help explain to the public, a couple of years ago, we approved a 10-10-10 plan, and just a few minutes ago, you mentioned 10-10-7. Can you explain why it went from 10 to 7?
Yes, so, and forgive me if I say something incorrect, and I'm talking mostly to the folks behind me because I wasn't here at that time. But my understanding is that was based on a study and feedback on what the plan was in order to both catch the fund up to make sure that the fund could be sustainable going forward into the future, and then also address some specific capital improvements and capital investment that was needed long term. And at the time, that study produced what effectively was a 3-year plan that said there were $10 increases needed. And I mentioned during the workshops that we do review it annually to see what the needs are. And so the first 2 years, that need was identified as $10. And so those adjustments were made accordingly. During the 3rd year, based on our analysis, again, of the capital improvements, not only in FY23, but long term, as well as the operational needs. That analysis, instead of showing $10 needed, it showed $7 would be needed in order to maintain those improvements and as well as the operating cost.
Just a follow-up, Mayor.
Follow?
Just a comment, and so just for the citizens that listen and watch in, we're going to do this on an annual basis and make sure that we're not charging our citizens too much. And so I want to thank you and the team to find that, you know what, we didn't need all this, so we're going to charge a little bit less. And I'll second your motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Scott, the final comment I've got is when the 10-10-10 was recommended, that was actually by a citizens committee. So that committee was made up of a couple council members, but by and large, that committee was made up of citizens that volunteered to be on that task force, and they actually made the recommendation. I've got a motion, I've got a second. Any other questions? Vote at this time, please. It passes 7-0. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Item number 4B, first and final consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land ordinance number 2278, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, levying a property tax rate for the year 2022 and directing the tax assessor collector to assess, account for, and distributes property taxes as herein levied. Ms. Jennifer Brown, our Director of Finance. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. All right, so second item on your agenda that is budgetary related is the approval of the tax rate. Just a brief overview. Property tax is one of the main revenue sources. It supports our general fund and our debt service funds. It is one of the few revenue streams that the city does have control over, and it is one of our most stable sources of revenue. It supports the general operations in the general fund, including public safety, public works, parks, as well as other functions provided by the general government, such as infrastructure maintenance, which would be roads, drainage, and parks. On the debt side, it supports our GO bonds that will be issued for our projects approved by voters in 2019, and it supports our outstanding debt obligations. This chart shows the historical tax rate for the city back to 1993, when the city implemented the sales tax for property tax reduction. And over the next couple of years, you can see that the tax rate dropped 10 cents just from the implementation of that sales tax rate. And then over the next few years, we continually lowered that tax rate as our sales tax revenues grew. And so that sales tax for property tax reduction allowed us to lower our tax rate initially to a point where we were at 30 cents back in the 2008 timeframe. At that point, there's only so low you can go before you have no more lowering to do. So the City Council decided to start adjusting the Homestead exemption, which is the line that's shown on your chart here. And so we raised the Homestead exemption, and I say we, City Council, raised from 1% to 5% in 2007 and have continued to raise that since then. This year you raised it to 13%, and so we're at a 13% homestead exemption with a 30.3465 tax rate. So the recommended tax rate is no change in the aggregate from the current tax rate. We are recommending that you shift 0.008790 from the maintenance and operations component to the debt service component. This will do two things, and I'll just skim over to the next slide. With the GO bond implementation plans, we had anticipated that we would need to raise the tax rate by 1 cent this year to fund the projects that were proposed in fiscal year 23. The growth in the assessed value that we saw this year allows us to shift that 0.879 cents within the existing tax rate from M&O to debt service and avoid that tax rate increase. As well, we are able to accelerate the final drainage and street project that was in the, from fiscal year 24 to 23. That would be the Sugar Creek drainage improvements and the street improvements along Country Club Boulevard. That will complete the street and drainage portions of the GO bond that was approved in 2019. There were a notice published, and it included the proposed tax rate of 0.3465. Our no new revenue rate is 0.318287. That is the rate that would raise not a dollar more or not a penny more in additional revenue than you raised in the previous year. And the voter approval tax rate, which is the tax rate that is required, or anything exceeding that, requires us to go to the voters for approval. We're at 3.359778, so we are below the voter approval rate. We held a public hearing on September 13th here at City Hall, and we had no speakers at the public hearing. The impact to the average residential tax bill, and this is based on our overall citywide average home value, with the increase to the homestead exemption from 12 to 13%, which is an 8.3% increase to the homestead. Our average home value went from $384,000 to almost $422,000. That is citywide, not reflecting on any individual home value changes. So just under 9.8% in valuation growth. With the dollar impact of that homestead exemption is an 18.9% increase in the amount that we're exempting off of that value. And so that buys down the taxable value to $367,000. The overall impact to the tax bill is $100 per year, or 8.54%. Recommendation is consideration of first and final reading of ordinance number 2278, setting a tax rate for 2022 of 0.346500, maintenance and operations component of 0.200061, and a debt service tax rate of 0.146439. And directing the tax assessor to assess, levy, account for, and distribute the property taxes. State law provides that the motion to adopt the tax rate must be using specific language, and so I have that here on the screen for you. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. Item number 4B, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.346500, which is effectively an 8.86% increase in the tax rate. Second. Got a second by Lane. Any questions from the council? Vote at this time, please. It passes 7-0. Thank you, council members. Item number 4C, consideration of an action on the ratification of tax revenue included in the fiscal year 2023 budget. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor. This is your third and final item related to the budget this year. Local government code section 102.007 provides that because this year's budget and property tax levy raises more revenue from property tax than we raised last year, that you have to have one more vote separate and apart from the budget, to the vote to adopt the budget and the tax rate, to ratify the increase in the tax revenue that was in the budget. And so it also provides that we have to have a cover page in the budget that shows the record vote of each member of the governing body or the city council, and then property tax rates for current and preceding fiscal year and the amount of debt obligations. That cover page is in the budget exhibit that was in your packets this evening. Obviously, we'll go in and fill the results of the vote for the final budget, and then we will file that with the city secretary, and will be posted on our website until the first anniversary. So basically this time next year. So this is the statement that is included on the budget cover page. States that we will raise more revenue from property taxes by an amount of $5,701,894. It is a 9.89% increase from last year's budget. And this includes $863,758 in property that is new to the tax roll this year. The same statement was included in our notice of public hearing on the proposed budget. So with that, I recommend that council vote to ratify the tax revenues as shown in the fiscal year 2023 budget and tax rate for 2022.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to ratify the tax revenues as shown in the 2023 budget. Got a second by Jacobson. Any other questions? Vote this time, please. And it passes 7-0. Item number 5, contracts and agreements. 5A, consideration of an action on authorization of an interlocal agreement by and between the City of Sugar Land and League City, and a shared agency agreement by and between Motorola Solutions and the City of Sugar Land in the amount of $1,194,801 for the city's shared cost of a computer-aided dispatch and records management system for public safety operations effective October 1st, 2022. This contract will automatically renew for 9 additional one-year terms for a total contract amount of $3,774,406. And we have with us Ms. Shannon Price, our Public Safety Dispatch Director.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. So the item for your consideration this evening is the agreements that are required to allow Sugar Land to continue participating in the grid consortium for cost sharing of a CAD and RMS system. CAD is computer-aided dispatch, and that is the software used by the dispatchers to enter calls for service. It's also where we dispatch police, fire, and EMS units to those calls for service, and also where we identify the location of our responders in the field. RMS is the records management system, and that provides for storage and retrieval of information related to public safety operations and investigations. The CAD RMS system is essential to effective public safety operations. So a little bit of background. League City created a grid consortium so that agencies could participate in the shared cost of a CAD RMS system, a collective CAD RMS system. And Sugar Land joined the grid consortium in 2014. The member agencies in the consortium share the cost of the hardware, the annual maintenance, and implementation fees based on their percentage of the total system usage. Right now, there are 20 cities in the consortium, and the 4 largest cities make up over 50% of the system usage and thereby pay over 50% of the cost of the system. The largest agency is Galveston at 17.64%, and Sugar Land is second at 12.8%. In contrast, the 4 smallest cities in the consortium each use less than 1% of the total system. So not only do we save by being able to share the expenses of the CAD RMS system by being in the consortium, but we also benefit from the technical expertise, the IT support and maintenance from the League City system administrators, because they share that across the agencies. The existing CAD and RMS software that is currently in use by the grid consortium is near the end of life, which is resulting in insufficient support and maintenance from the existing vendor. The member agencies began evaluating and assessing CAD and RMS software from other vendors in 2019. League City then went through an RFP process, and a board made up of the chiefs of police from all the member agencies. They analyzed the proposals that were received based on the evaluation criteria outlined in the RFP, and it was found that Motorola was the most qualified respondent that matched the functional needs of the consortium. Earlier this year, League City entered into an agreement with Motorola Solutions for Motorola Premier One CAD RMS software to replace the existing grid software. And their agreement includes support and maintenance for a 10-year period. Sugar Land's year one expenditure would come out of the fiscal year 23 budget, and it includes the cost for the CAD and RMS licenses, enhanced system components, site license and interface fees, primary hardware and server software, the implementation costs, data conversion, and radio integration. You can see that we have a nice little discount there, and that is simply us benefiting from the buying power of the grid consortium. So we get a discount simply because we are participating and buying with them. We also get a discount, we would get a discount for an early signing of the contract and the 10-year commitment. The enhanced system components that I mentioned that were included in the year one expenditure includes modules like Premier One Handheld. This is a module that allows command staff to have the CAD database and messaging on a mobile device. eCitations extends the CAD and RMS to a handheld device for the field responders, so they don't have to rely solely on the computers that they have in their vehicles, which is going to be really helpful for the motorcycle officers. The CAD and RMS virtual desktop is going to enhance the system performance in remote locations. This is especially beneficial for Sugar Land in that we're geographically separated from the League City server. Command Central Evidence is going to streamline the collection and categorizing of evidence data into one location. Command Central Community is a web-based system that's going to allow information to flow between citizens and the public safety community. Command Central Investigate is a next-generation crime and intelligence solution. It integrates existing data sources, and it's going to help to leverage interjurisdictional data. And then finally, disaster recovery. It replicates the data between the primary data center and the recovery data center. So the amount for the support and maintenance for year one is included in the initial cost. You can see the amounts for years 2 through 10 listed here. The amounts listed also include the required licenses and subscriptions for those enhanced components that I mentioned, totaling over $2.5 million. So the total cost for Sugar Land's participation over a 10-year period is going to be $3,774,406. This is substantially less than what it would cost us to host a standalone CAD RMS system. In preparation for determining whether we wanted to continue to participate in the grid, IT did a cost analysis. They determined that year one alone would cost us over $2.5 million for a standalone system, and that didn't include the cost for hosting our own server or the additional tech support we would need, which would indicate the need for additional IT personnel. So League City has entered into the master customer agreement with Motorola as the host agency in order for Sugar Land to continue to participate in the grid system. Staff is recommending the execution of an interlocal agreement with the City of League City for the cooperative purchase of goods and services, and the shared agency agreement with Motorola Solutions for the shared cost of the CAD RMS system and services. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
William?
Thank you for your presentation. As I look at this and I look at the numbers and I look at the return, it appears okay. Is this our best option, or is this a option? I know that may sound silly, but I mean, is this the best option for us moving over the next, 10 years?
Staff, we had some discussions about whether it would be the best option for us to move to a standalone system. And besides being cost prohibitive, we really do get the benefit of the tech support from League City. We don't have to worry about the maintenance of the system. If there are system-wide issues, their IT folks are on it before we have to, look into it. So we really benefit all around. Now, there is more functionality in this new Motorola CAD RMS system, which is going to allow us to better mold things to our liking. So it's not like, okay, we have to go agency-wide. We can customize things for our agency. So we think it's a win-win.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by McCutcheon. Do I have a second? Second. Got a second by Carmelli. If you vote at this time, please. And it's a 7-0 vote. Thank you, council members.
Thank you.
Item number 6. Thanks, Shannon. Ordinances Resolution 6A, consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land Resolution number 2241. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, adopting a City Council policy that provides guidelines for billing and collection services related to provision of emergency medical services and repealing Resolution number 1443. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Once again. And before you this evening was something different, not budget or property tax related. We're going to talk Ems Building Policy. Let me give you a little background because we have not talked about this in some time. So the first billing policy was adopted in 2014 in November, ahead of us implementing our EMS service. And we have not gone back and looked at that policy since. So during that time, we have transitioned from not having a CMS number to getting our CMS number. We had our initial billing company was EMSMC from January of 2015 to September of 2019. And then in October 2019, we transitioned to Emergicon, who is our current billing provider. Additionally, last summer, we applied for and were approved to participate in the ambulance supplemental payment program, and this is through the Texas Department of Health and Human Services, and that happened last June. And what this program does is it allows us to, provides us supplemental payment for federal funds for uninsured patients that we provide service to. In order for us to participate in this program, we must have a charity care policy in place that meets their standards, and we have to submit an annual cost report. The charity care policy would apply only to patients that have no coverage from Medicare, Medicaid, or other third-party coverage, and have a verified household adjusted gross income of less than 400% of the federal poverty level. And that poverty level changes annually. It's published by the Department of Health and Human Services. Our intent is not to provide charity care to patients who have are able to pay, or for patients who have private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, or other coverage. Just to give you an idea of what the federal poverty level looks like, because it's not something that you normally think of on a day-to-day basis. For one person, it's $13,590. And so 400% of that is $54,360. And so, and then you can see for each additional person in the household, it grows by about $5,000 on the level 1 or 1 times poverty level. And so you can get 400% for a family of 4, it's $111,000. And so they have to meet that threshold, and they have to meet the threshold of not having any other coverage. So it's not an either or thing. It has to be both. They have to not have coverage and be under the 400% threshold. So with that, we are also recommending improvements to the policy that will allow our billing company to enhance our collections through negotiations on our behalf to help increase the collection of revenue. An example of this would be negotiating the write-off of disposable charges like oxygen or supplies. And Medicare currently does not pay for oxygen or disposable charges, so a lot of times these charges are already getting written off. And so if we have a private pay patient who says, okay, well, I can pay this much of the transport fee, and say the transport fee is $1,800 and there's $50 worth of supplies and oxygen, this gives them the ability to say, okay, well, we'll write off that portion of it if you can pay the bulk of the charges. We're also recommending to offer a prompt payment discount, and this would apply only to private pay patients or patient pay only. We're recommending a 15% discount if they make the full payment within 30 days of the first invoice. This segment of our population, or our patient population, is the lowest overall collection rates when you look at the amount billed to the amount collected, given that there are no contractual discounts. So a lot of our payments from insurance or Medicare, Medicaid, there are like 45% of those just get written off due to contractual adjustments that we can't collect. And so this segment does not have that type of contracted rates. We're also recommending to authorize the billing company to write off small balances that are less than $50, and this would be primarily in cases where the cost to continue collecting those amounts would exceed the amounts that we would be collecting. And finally, adjusting our no activity timeline. Currently, we have a 12-month period with no activity, no payments on the account before we send it to collections. They're recommending, and we're recommending that we lower that to 180 days or 6 months. We would still continue to collect, but it would be through our third party, our delinquent collections firm, because they are better equipped to collect debt that's not fresh. The recommendations on our policy, we discussed this with the Council of Finance Audit Committee at the September 1st meeting. Also provided, they had some questions, provided that follow-up information to you in a fairly detailed FYI. I think it was about 3 pages long. Tried to condense as much information as I could into a bunch of charts for you to kind of tell the story. But with that, staff recommends approval of Resolution 2241, adopting a revised EMS billing policy with the charity care provisions to allow ASP participation, and it would also repeal, that's what I'm thinking of, Resolution 14-43. So I can remember the numbers, just not the words. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Susan?
Thank you. Jennifer, I don't know if you went through this or not, but I may have missed it. What percentage of our calls are charity care calls?
In the last year, so I did an analysis of the billing activity from October through August. We have written off, I don't know percentage of calls, but we've written off $33,000 out of about $8 million that we've billed. So it's not a large percentage.
Okay, thank you.
And right now, we're not collecting anything on those. So this would allow us to actually collect revenues from that ASP program.
Got a motion by Watley to approve. Do I have a second? Second. A second by McCutcheon. If you'll vote at this time, please. And it carries 7-0. Thank you, Jennifer. I think you're back up.
One more.
Item number 6B, consideration of an action on City of Sugar Land Resolution number 2240, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, adopting the City of Sugar Land investment policy in accordance with the Public Funds Investment Act, and City of Sugar Land Resolution number 2242, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sugar Land, Texas, adopting the City of Sugar Land investment strategy in accordance with the Public Funds Investment Act. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so in our recent budget discussions, we've had some discussion with City Council on the interest earnings that we're earning on our portfolio. And as you're aware, interest rates have been just in the toilet basically for the last couple of years. And so we are now in a rising interest rate environment. And so we decided to try to explore what options we have available to us to improve our interest earnings. But we want to make sure that we're still within the guidelines of the Public Funds Investment Act, as well as our investment policy and strategy, still maintaining a conservative stance towards investments, but also increasing our yields. So currently, there are investment pools that invest in commercial paper. These investment pools there are 2 pools that have this option available. Historically, they've earned between 20 and 50 basis points more than those that we are currently in, which only contain government-backed funds. Our existing investment policy does not allow us participation in these pool funds, as well as it does not allow us direct investment in commercial paper. So we as staff are proposing to allow limited participation in these in local investment pools to increase our interest earnings. And just give you a little background on the Public Funds Investment Act. This is the state law that was approved back in the late 90s that governs everything that we do as far as investing public funds. It applies to cities, counties, school districts, sets the parameters, what we have to follow. It does require annual review and adoption of a written investment policy and strategy, which you did back in April, and also requires that we only do business with broker-dealers that have been approved by City Council. The policy must be written, and it has to focus that our emphasis is safety of principal and liquidity, and it also addresses things like diversification, yield, maturity, and quality and capability of investment management. And anytime we make changes, we have to bring that back to you, and the changes must be tracked and noted in the adopted version. Our current policy is more restrictive than required by state law. State law does allow commercial paper. Our current policy does not. The investment strategy has to address these 6 investment objectives in order of importance. I won't read those to you. Those have not changed of what those objectives are, but you can see that number 6 on that list is yield. So while we would like to increase that yield, we have to make sure that we achieve the first objectives, which are safety of principal and liquidity first. So we're recommending as staff that we allow participation in pools that do invest in commercial paper, but limit that participation to no more than 25% of the portfolio. We currently allow up to 90% of the total portfolio to be invested in multiple investment pools, but no more than 50% in one pool. And so all of these would overlap. So we would still only be allowing 90%. We could have up to 25% of the total in pools with commercial paper and up to 50% in any one pool. So we'll figure out the diversification and how all that works out, and we'll include that on the investment reports for you. We are not recommending that we do direct investment in commercial paper at this time. Only participation in a selective dive into the commercial paper pool investments. So the other adjustments to the investment strategy would be just aligning the diversification section of the strategy with these changes to the investment policy as it gets addressed in both places. We did review this with the Council Finance Audit Committee, and we discussed the changes, and staff recommends approval of both resolutions. 2240, which would be the investment policy. 2242 would be in the investment strategy. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Stuart?
Thank you, Mayor. Jennifer, on the maximum allocation to pools,
Yes,
90%.
you were correct.
Well, no, I wasn't going there.
Yes.
That's 90% in the aggregate, or 90% for each fund? Like the general fund couldn't have 100% in one pool.
They could, yes.
They
It's
could.
90. We have a pooled investment strategy, so it's 90% of the total portfolio. So if we have a $300 million portfolio, 270 million of it could be in pools, but only 150 million of it could be in any one pool.
So what if we had some sort of liquidity problem with one of the pools, and we had 100% of one of our funds in that pool? Are we allowed to do interfund loans and whatnot? We won't have a liquidity problem in any one of our
No.
pools.
We manage our cash and investments as a pooled investment portfolio. So if one fund is tied up in a longer term investment and we need more liquidity in that fund, we will transfer that investment at a book value to the other fund. And same with the pools. So we regularly do journal entries every month, transferring funds around as we need to meet the liquidity needs.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move to adopt both of those resolutions.
I've got a motion by Jacobson. Do I have a second? Second. Got a second by Ferguson. And it passes 7-0. Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Jennifer. Item number 7, City Council City Manager Report. 7A, Councilmember Reports. Jennifer, let's start with you.
I toured the Reese Center with the leadership group, the Fort Bend Chamber. It's very nice, among other areas in our region, learning about diversity and culture and so forth. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. William?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to tell you guys that Best Buy is back, right? So this past week, we did a ribbon cutting for their store opening back up in our city. And the reason I wanted to announce that tonight is I want to make sure that our team in Sugar Land hears what their regional director of Best Buy said the other day on Friday. I told her, I said, I am so thankful that you are investing in Sugar Land again. She said, Sugar Land is our favorite city because we know that if we make this investment, the city will help us do this right. And I said, well, there you go. You know, I was all excited, and I have received countless excited emails and messages from our homeowners and consumers saying it's great to have them back, but they're back because our team is really doing a great job with them, and I appreciate each one of you for that compliment we received. Keep it up.
Thanks, William. Suzanne?
Thank you. Caught me off guard. I thought you were going down the road. No, I think my big news is that I want to thank all of you for supporting me and being there for our Sugar Land Firefighters Gala. I see my firefighters here. Thank you, guys. You are fantastic. And gals. They're all. So we did, I think, 165,000 of our Sugar Land residents and businesses. Thank you all for everything you did.
Sean?
Mayor, myself, Councilmember Watley, McCutcheon, and Stuart Jacobson, our Mayor Pro Tem, we all attended the grand opening of Quick Quack Car Wash on Highway 90 and University Boulevard in District 1. And they are doing 12 days of free car wash starting last Wednesday. So I think we've got a few more days. You can go out and get a free car wash. They do try to sell you a membership. I didn't do it, but I'm cheap, and so I didn't do it. But the car was pretty darn clean from the outside. But Quick car wash on Highway 6, Highway 90 and University. Go check them out. And then yesterday I attended, or actually volunteered, at the Forest Foundation Golf Tournament at the Sweetwater Country Club, where $700,000 was raised. We had participants from all over the country staying right here in the Sugar Land Marriott, and we had an event at Bar Louie the Sunday night before, and it was good income for our city because of this tournament. But more importantly, we raised awareness about Childhood Cancer Awareness Month and the gold ribbon, and $700,000 is a big dollar amount. That's it.
Stuart?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of fun things that I did. Among others, I attended, along with Council Members Ferguson, Grimali, and McCutcheon. We attended the Parks and Rec Bikes and Brews event over at Brazos River Park. And I will note that I physically live farthest from Brazos River Park, and I'm the only one who actually rode their bike there, and it wasn't an electric bike. It was Jacobson powered. The other thing I did that was a blast.
I'm proud of you, buddy. Man, how far was that?
I'm proud of myself, too, if you want to know the truth. The other thing I did was, one of the other things I did was hosted the Amorex, which is one of our great employers here in the city, at the Earth, Wind, and Fire concert, and that was great. And I was lucky to have Councilmember McCutcheon along with me for that.
Carol?
Well, Councilmember Jacobson and I attended the Extend the Clock event, and that was due to the National Suicide Prevention Month, and it's called Extend the Clock because on average, every 25 seconds, someone commits suicide. And so this was hosted by the Society of Royals, and it's a nonprofit organization that works to decrease youth suicides by instilling hope and creating purpose. So they do some really good work. And then I hosted Hope Biosciences at Alicia Keys, and Hope Sciences is a business here in Sugar Land that does research on adult stem cells. And then finally, I attended a Traffic Box artist dedication event at the Heritage Museum, where we got to recognize the talented artists who are doing all of the beautiful traffic box wraps around our city. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Two things tonight. One, I'd like to thank staff and the council members. Baseball season ends on Sunday. So you guys have done a great job of partnering with staff. Staff's done a great job of not only getting clients there, but providing that support in those games. So thank you very much for that. Finally, this Thursday, we will do at the Fort Bend County Fair. We're getting ready to open it. So Fort Bend County Fair Night for the Fort Bend Mayor and Council Members Association. Look forward to seeing all of you there. And then the parade starts on Friday. So we're into fair season. Hope to see you at the auction. Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I got to attend the Sugar Land Fire Gala, which has become the highlight of the year. It is a great, great event. And this year I walked away with a rocking chair instead of a dog, and so it's done a lot less damage to the house. The mayor and
Jessica's excited.
Very excited. The mayor and I had a really nice meeting the other day with the GM for the Sugar Land Marriott and got to learn the exciting news of some significant reinvestments into that facility, and it's just performing off the charts. Also, this Saturday, the 24th, from 10 to 3 at Sugar Land Town Square, our Parks Department's having the first in-person Sugar Land Fall Fest, and I think we got a cold front coming. It'll be in the mid-90s, and that'll be nice. But it's music, entertainment, all for free. So please come out. That's all I've got, Mayor.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
We got a motion to adjourn. The time is 6:42. Good job.